You know the old saying, some days you go fishing, some days you go catching. That works for hunting too. Some days you go hunting, sometimes you harvest an animal. We didn't harvest a bear this week, but we have some good stories anyway, and I'll show you some great pictures of the country and some of the stuff that was showing up on our trail cameras this week. I'm in my buddy's trophy room in Wyoming, and as you can see from a couple of sheep and a big moose, a mountain lion, bear, he's had more hunting experiences than I have, and it's just fun to tag around with him sometimes and enjoy what he does. So on this bear hunt, I only brought a camera, and we sat on a couple of different baits with several different people, hoping that the bears would show up. They didn't. We got a lot of pictures on trail cameras. The bears had gone nocturnal for the most part. I do have some daytime images that I'll give you. And we think part of the problem was in this particular drainage where we've hunted, which has been very, very productive for bears for the last 30 years or more. They've had a huge influx of grizzlies since 1988. The game and fish biologists happened to be in this drainage while we were here, live trapping grizzlies and fitting them with radio collars. And they collared at least 2, perhaps 3, we're not sure about the third one yet. But what they do is they travel around and look at bait locations, see which ones might be frequented by grizzlies, and then they sort of take over that location from the hunters. Those of you that may go to Canada or other places for baited bear hunts, they have a very high success rate there. They have very high bear densities there. The mountains of the West are kind of different. They always have black bears. In Wyoming, you can bait for the bears in some locations. Cannot bait relatively close around Yellowstone because of the chances you're going to get a grizzly bear instead of a black bear. Montana does not allow baiting at all. I believe in Idaho you can not only bait, but you can hunt with hounds. So each state approaches it a little bit differently. The area we hunt is very frequented by grizzlies, but it has not yet been banned from baiting. A hunter here can register up to 2 bait locations, and they can be on federal land, they can be on deeded private land, it varies. They allow no more than 1 bait in a section, that means a square mile, 640-acre section. And you have to register latitude, longitude, so that way the game warden can come in and check if you're baiting properly. In this locale, the bait has to be within a container. Most people normally use 55-gallon plastic drums, and they wire them down to logs or trees to hold them in place. The bait can also not include things like stale donuts, which bears happen to love in a lot of other locations. So my friend Mark, what he does is pick up meat scraps from the local grocery store. Usually it's large chunks of fat or bony things where they've gotten all the good off of the meat that they can off the beef. Mark freezes those over the course of the winter, and then he has plenty of bait to take to these locations. And several hunters, in his case, kind of band together with their 2 locations each, and they will bait some of them, because the problem is if a grizzly is seen at that bait, then that bait can no longer operate. In fact, they don't even want the hunters to go in and remove the barrel, trail cameras, or whatever they might have. Game and Fish goes in and does that for you, and they'll bring the stuff out to you. They're trying to minimize grizzly bear human interaction as much as possible for the safety of both the bears and the people. That way, if they lose some of their bait locations because grizzlies show up, then they can go to some of the other locations that this group of hunters shares. The season generally is I believe it opens up May 1, runs to about June 15 in the spring season. And this year was pushed a little late because of the extraordinarily heavy snow load they had this year. So I'll show you some pictures of how they bait. It's a matter of packing in 40 or 50 pounds of meat scraps on a backpack. And generally they put their baits within a half mile or closer of where they can drive. And many of the roads in this area, you can only drive part way up a given creek drainage, and then it's blocked off with a gate. Game and Fish and the landowners and Forest Service and everybody, they have keys to the gates. The hunters, once they reach the gate, that's a walk-in operation, both to carry in your barrel, your bait, and your bear, if you successfully get one. So over the course of the week, we set several evenings. There's really no luck in going out for a morning hunt, because chances are if you try to sneak in the morning, you're going to scare a bear off the bait if they're there, and the chances of getting a shot are very low. So you go out in the evening. A shooting light here this time of the year, we're at the end of May. Shooting light is probably 9:15. We usually pull off the bait about 9 o'clock, just because with that diminishing light, there's chance of wounding or more complicated to find the bear if you shoot one. So over the course of several evenings, including multiple hunters out each evening, no bear showed up. But as I said, I'll show you some cool country. I'll show you some photographs of what was showing up on the trail cameras. And in one instance, they lost their bait because a grizzly showed up. 2 hunters were in that evening, and they got what I describe as a bottle of smoking nitroglycerin. The bait was frequented by a grizzly sow with 2 cubs. And one of the guy did some video on his camera and snapped a few pictures that I'll show you. And he said he's lucky he had his camera on a tripod, because he was shaking so hard you would never be able to see what the video looked like. It's pretty exciting stuff. At the end of our hunt, we came back to town. One hunter did remain up in our camp, and so my buddy Mark left his Polaris up there for him. Those folks pulled out yesterday, and again, no bears. So Mark and I drove up on the mountain from town last night to pick up his Polaris, load it on the trailer, and bring it home. Yesterday evening was like a trip through a wild zoo. As we left town, there were antelope along the fence line. When we turned off the main highway, headed towards the mountains, there were a bunch of bull elk just starting to sprout antlers, feeding in some of the irrigated hay meadows. Further up country, a fox ran across the road in front of us. Not too far up, started seeing some mule deer. Then a whitetail deer was there. They've been pushing farther and farther up this drainage over a number of years. But the coolest thing, when we got there, we're just pulling off to start to back up to the trailer, and Mark said, "Look, out in the sagebrush." And about 150 yards away ran a bear. It was about 9:15. It's about the end of shooting light, so we couldn't say for certain that it was a black bear. But it was a very large bear. It was very bulked up, very muscular, so undoubtedly a boar. And we watched him through the binoculars, running through the sagebrush, run up the side of the mountain, stopped out there about maybe 350 yards, watched us for a while, but it was just getting so dim there was no chance that Mark was going to take a shot. But we did see a bear in the daylight. If you're interested in bear hunting, research, going to Canada is how most guys put a bear on their wall. The western states, to me, are the most exciting, because the bears are, I think, less habituated to the baits and the chance that you're going to bump into a grizzly. I have only seen a grizzly in Yellowstone Park, so I have still not seen one truly in the wild, but I'll probably be back to try again. This is just going to be a short video this week that I show you. I'll be back home and start putting more content out after that. Thank you very much for looking in. If you like what I'm doing here, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and hope you stay safe out there. Take care.